thank you for staying with us. As you have seen right there, Olufunsho Doherty joins us this morning. He is the governorship candidate of the ADC in Lagos State. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, definitely what we just saw now, I want to speak to it. There are those who are wondering, okay, so what happened to your own, candidate? He has put out a statement saying, no, he doesn't agree with this. He's not in sync with it. He's going to go all the way. And then there's another person being touted as national chairman of the party, or as a caretaker chairman of the party. What we see Patricia Akachiko saying, look, this is one too many because it's all for money. Various factions of the party have adopted various political party presidential candidates. What's going on?
Well, thank you. I mean, these are, national questions. And as you know, I'm running for office in the Lagos State chapter of the party. But these are matters which, by the way, are sub judice. They're in court. There is the national chairman who is basically administering the affairs of the party, who is dealing presently with INEC, and who INEC has traditionally recognized and continues to recognize pending the outcome of the litigations in question. And that group, which is a group that has endorsed the presidential candidate, Peter Obi, in that event yesterday, had, as part of the decisions that they had taken, expelled the presidential candidate from membership of the party and so on for activities which they termed, I don't know the full range of reasons, but for a set of activities which were, and he's in court challenging that. So I guess we have to wait for the resolution of those matters from the court's perspective. So that's the situation. But as far as we are concerned here in Lagos State, the Lagos State chapter of the party, we're united and we're moving ahead, and we're bringing our agenda to the people of Lagos, which we've talked about.
I mean, given the laws that uphold our democratic process and our electoral process, a party needs to have some form of national spread. So it's to be expected that the governorship candidate such as yourself will be fully abreast of what's happening at the national level as well, so that at least people will say, okay, well, this candidate has a good support base and all of that. So where do you belong in all of this? Because one is wondering, this is not something that's just starting, it's been on for a while. What is your own perception of this? There are those who would say, why should we vote for the ADC in Lagos when at the national level, the party is in disunity?
Well, I think the thing with presidential, what you have to realize is that political parties, which you know very well, are diverse organizations made up of diverse groups. And there's no political party that has not gone through litigations, even in this election cycle. So it's not something that is rare or unseen in political parties or in organizations generally. And people disagree. People have disagreements as to interpretation of constitutions, interpretation of rules, procedures, etc. And ultimately, the courts determine and they decide, and they have a process that they go through, and that is rule of law. And so if you see that the process that our party is even going through is demonstrative of rule of law, because those issues are in court, they are being determined. Ultimately, the outcome will be determined. And obviously, there's a regulator that oversees all of this. So we are also in engagement with INEC. So the people are protected, and the people should take comfort in knowing that a political party, ADC, APC, PDP, they've all had internal issues. They've all had issues of litigation. The courts intervene where required, and people move on.
Okay. Well, while that at the national level was going on, issues around your party collapsing its structures for the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, in Lagos, there are also allegations that the ADC has also collapsed its structures to support the PDP candidate. That's also something you'll find in some prominent, platforms online. Tell us about that. Is that correct?
That is absolutely not true. The party has not, and the party itself has put out a statement. The state organ of the party has put out a statement to say that that is not true. As you know, a party is made up of individuals. And so there are some individuals who chose, for reasons best known to them, to align with the PDP in Lagos. And they made that declaration and transition. And it's a free world. And we are an open party. We take people in. People also go from us to other parties. They had their motivations. They have the incentives which drive their behavior, and we cannot control individual the way people will react to incentives. But we are very clear. Our structure remains, our platform remains, our leadership is one in Lagos.
So you're not discountenancing the possibility that certain individuals are throwing support for the PDP because of certain incentives?
That's essentially what has happened. What those incentives are is subject to question and debate. But basically, they have taken their own personal decisions to move in that direction for reasons.
The reason I'm also interested in where you, as a governorship candidate of the ADC in Lagos, belongs, where that crisis of your party at the national level is because there is a seeming, new ethos in politics in Nigeria now, where you find certain leaders of party belonging to a particular political party, but they have loyalties in other parts of the election. And we see that playing out in PDP, the G5 governors. We see that even in certain parts of APC, in Ogun State to be precise, where the leader of the party in that state belongs to APC, but he's supporting another political party. So what do you think about this brazen, openness where political leaders are, throwing their weight behind other candidates where other elections are concerned, but they hold firmly to party structure?
So I would say that it is somewhat unusual, but I don't think it's the first time that it's going to happen. I think generally what constitutes party or anti-party activities is defined by the party and the party constitution. So those issues are determined at that level. Now beyond that, and beyond kind of the strict determination of what is party and anti-party, people have individual fundamental rights, right? So you would grant them the ability to express their fundamental rights to the extent that they do not contravene the constitutional provisions of their party that then require the consequences of those actions to be taken against them. So I think it is not something that we should think will ever disappear from our political space. And I think that ultimately, yes, people will be party people. Parties will have rules. But within the ambit of those rules, people will also express individual views and opinions. And I think, to some extent, in some ways, it's healthy, right? Because people...
it's healthy?
Yeah, in a sense, it's healthy, as long as they don't go outside of what the constitutional provisions provide, right? Because you don't want people to be automatons, right? You want people to be able to kind of, particularly people who are in positions of leadership, you want them to be able to think through issues and represent the first and foremost in loyalty to the people rather than in loyalty to blind loyalty to rules.
Yeah, what you just said now brings to mind a concerning perspective in all this conversation. It's so easy for political parties or members of political parties to segue, so to speak, from one political party into another. And it begs the question of party loyalty or affiliation to principles, to core values, to party ethos, to philosophies, and all of those things. Do you see that as something significantly concerning in Nigeria's political ethos?
So it's a good question that you've asked, and I think it is concerning. But I think it's also a reflection of the degree of development of our democracy and of our political parties, and maybe the historical path that our parties have taken. So today, yes, there are manifestos, yes, there are written expressions of this, but ideologies are not, I would say they're not convening forces within the party such that you can look at a party and say this is its ideology and people stick to it in the way in which you would think that should be the case. But I think that as a democracy evolves, as parties evolve, as we go through the processes and various election cycles, we will see that play out. Our democracy is young, let's not forget, even though, you know.
Would you call a 24-year-old child young? Like that?
Not a child, democracy. Democracy and a child are two different things, right?
Well, so, democracy has certain expectations.
Yes. So, I mean, you know, but I think what is important is that we're making progress. But I think it's also the case then that this also makes the point, and we're seeing this play out in the current election. This also makes the point that it is particularly important in this context to think carefully about both the candidate and the party.
What's the ideology of your party?
So the ADC is built around inclusive governance that is in the interest of the people, and that translates the benefits of governance broadly across the society. And you will see that reflected in many different aspects of the things that we do, not least being the party's stance on things like women involvement, youth, people living with disabilities, and those kinds of things.
And local government issues. Is that what informed your position on the local governments, on what you intend to do with local governments?
So if you look at if you then take that and you look at our Tiger agenda for Lagos, which is the agenda that we have for Lagos, you will see that the overarching vision of the agenda, as we've defined it, is one, to deliver quality of life, dignity, and respect to the average Lagosian. And then second, to lay a foundation for a Lagos in the first world. Those are the overarching visions. And what is Tiger? Tax reform for equity, prosperity, and growth, infrastructure for a modern megacity, government reform, education and health systems that the people trust, and then rule of law and public order. This whole thing is based around saying that, look, the benefits of governance must accrue in quality of life of the people. It's not enough to say, I spent 1.7 trillion in 2022, which we did. Well, it's not enough to say that we built this bridge or we did that. What is the quality of life of the people? And we believe that this agenda will deliver that in a way that shows that Lagos has been substantially undermanaged for the last 25 years.
Well, your political ideology is clear enough, but it then makes me wonder why you think that political permissiveness, demonstrated by political parties in today's parlance is acceptable on certain conditions, because your ideology is clear enough and distinct.
No, well, I think ideology, you see, it's not as if parties do not have stated ideologies. Now, do all the members of political parties generally move in the direction or adhere strictly to the ideologies? And what I'm saying is just a practical statement of fact. That is not the case in Nigeria today. And I'm not telling you anything that you don't know, right? And I'm saying that it is one of the indicators of the level of development. And as parties evolve, as people emerge, as leaders emerge through parties themselves are transformed. One of the things that is central for us, for example, in addition to bringing governance to the people of the state, is also to be a shaping force on the political party and on the landscape of political parties. And so that positive influence, I think, needs to happen at the level of the people, which is the electorate, and at the level of the political parties. And I'm talking about across political parties. If you look, for example, at the nomination process, right, that we go through in Nigeria, there's a lot to quarrel with there. And very often, the choices that people are faced with when they get to the electorate is a function of the quality of the nomination process. And very often that is flawed. And so that is something that we need to continually also work on.
Is that to say that if you do not achieve your aspiration of becoming governor of Lagos State, it's okay for you to cross over to another political party? Because that's the
I think it's always okay for people to move from party to party. It happens everywhere in the world. Nobody was born in one party and says, I must never leave this party until I die. I have never been in any other political party. I have been in only one political party, the ADC. Now, there are people I'm contesting against who have been, the gentleman in PDP, for example, was a stalwart in APC for so long and recently moved to PDP. The Labour Party gentleman, on the other hand, this is his third political party, the second in this cycle alone. So, I mean, people do different things. I have only belonged to one political party, but I would still not argue that, you must stay in one party and forever hold the views of that party. Because, again, even if ideologies remain constant, the implementation of those ideologies may be such that you are uncomfortable.
There are those who would argue with you, Mr. Doherty, when you say that it happens all over the world, that people, transit from party to party willy-nilly all over the world.
No, I didn't say willy-nilly. Okay. I said people move from party to party. So you have people who have been Republicans, for example, in the US, who then become Democrats.
Okay. But then there's always a question of their personal core values. For instance, if one or two questions that anyone would ask you in, for example, the United States democracy, you ask the question around, are you for or against abortion? That automatically says what party you belong to, what is your position, what's your disposition, what's your political leaning. That says that. And I'm pretty sure that's the same thing in a number of other countries all over the world. That's why, that question might be there.
Yeah, okay, I think that's a bit extreme to say that on that one dimension alone will determine whether you...
I'm saying just for instance.
No, I understand. I understand the point you are making.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's likely if you are for abortion that you will be for the party that is for abortion. But if you care about a whole lot of other issues and your preferences on the other side, you may weigh those over the abortion questions. Is partly what I'm saying. Now, your personal values it's a distinct matter, right? There should be some synergy between the two, but it's distinct. Your personal values are your personal values. Now, you should have an alignment between your personal values and the philosophies and ideologies of your party, right? But personal values will touch even on areas that are, that are non-state areas. So it is important. This goes back to my point around people have to look at the individual as well as the party. Because in Nigeria today, you cannot go and say, look, I'm going to look at this manifesto that XYZ party has written. And based on what is written in that manifesto, whoever is the candidate that is on the ballot, I'm going to vote for that person.
Even though at the end of the day, the political party is the one on the ballot, the individual.
Yes, so you have to ask, who is the individual? What is that individual's track record? What do we know about him? What do his actions over his track record reveal about him? And take those into consideration, in addition to the agenda you are presented with, to determine whether the outcome of governance under this individual on this party platform will likely be what is
you spoke about, my apologies, but you spoke about your Tiger agenda. The natural question I want to ask, you also said that as far as you're concerned, over the past 25 years thereabout, Lagos hasn't really gotten the best of what it should. That's what you essentially said.
Yes.
In what ways in particular? Because there are those who would say, well, each of these issues have been addressed one way or the other, by the government over the years. So in what ways, in your opinion, would you say the government of Lagos State over the years has misstepped and you want to address?
Okay, so it's a good question. And when you say each of these has been addressed, I don't agree.
No, they would there are those who would argue that way, of course.
Okay, so I would disagree with those who would argue that money has been spent in each of these areas does not mean that they have been addressed. And ultimately, we measure things by the quality of life, which is the outcome of governance. So if you look at Lagos, there's a ranking which is done by The Economist magazine, which you may be familiar with, which ranks cities on quality of life indicators. There are 5 things it measures: infrastructure, education, health, culture and environment, and stability. It's like a comprehensive report card. Lagos is consistently ranked towards the bottom of that list. In the most recent ranking, 171 out of 172 cities ranked. In the year before that, it was still the same 171 out of 172. So it doesn't matter that you are spending a lot of money. And Lagos has a lot of resources in relation to its neighbors. The question is, what is the outcome of those things? So if you look at traffic, people spend 3, 4, 5, 6 hours in traffic in Lagos on a daily basis. Tremendous cost in terms of productivity, but also in terms of health. Anywhere in the world, commute times are associated with air quality and health outcomes, right? Infrastructure, whether it's transit infrastructure, whether it's water, these are all areas of lack. Government reform. When you look at the government, when you look at the role of government, is it a supporter of the people, of businesses, or is it a predator on the people and business? And you ask people generally, what answer do you get? Education systems, do people trust it? Do people willingly send their children there? Or do they scrimp and save to send them to private schools even when they can't afford it? Health, what's the outcome in terms of, do people trust those systems? Do they access it willingly? Do they seek their primary health there? Right? Rule of law. Do we have rule of law on our streets? Is it chaotic? Right? Are we getting even the best of our existing infrastructure? Talk less of building new infrastructure.
Some would argue, pardon me, Ayo, if I could come in there, when you talk about some of the challenges of living in Lagos, either it's, the high number of slums, either it's, the number of out-of-school children.
Yeah.
Some would say that there are extraneous circumstances, contributing to this, which is, high number of rural urban migration to Lagos. And in the past, some governors of Lagos, a particular governor of Lagos, have been criticized, for sending some indigents of certain states back to their states. So how would you tackle this peculiar problem of Lagos? And to what extent, in addition to that, do you think it's a contributing factor to those socioeconomic problems in Lagos?
So I think that a city like Lagos should always expect that you will have this, right? And it's always been the case, by the way, that people have migrated to Lagos. When things are very bad, it may be a little higher and a little lower when things are better, but people have always migrated to Lagos. The second point to make is that people, in and of themselves, are not necessarily liabilities. They can also be assets. So the function of how you manage the economy is how you manage the people, how you equip them to be productive members of the society, and how you manage the society so that the whole society itself is prosperous and can absorb people. So I think that a lot more could be done in this regard. And I think that much of what we address with the Tiger Agenda is around the central question of saying that how do you manage the economy and the society in such a way that it is well governed, that the actions of government are consistent with the interests of the people and not for self-interest. Because if the actions of government are overwhelmingly for self-interest or substantially for self-interest, what happens over time, and this happens across societies, and we can point to many, what happens over time is that the resources of the society become concentrated in a small section of the society.
Okay.
And much of the society is impoverished. And if you do that, people will continue to be a liability. Because they are not part of the productive base. And there's so much we can talk about here.
Sincerely, there's so much we can talk about, really, because there are so many other issues, to us. For instance, how do you track this quality of life? We can take that off camera. We have to thank you very much for being a part of our conversation this morning. Olufunso Doherty is the ADC Lagos State governorship candidate. Thank you again for your time today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for being here.